Okay. Hello, my name is Shane Hand, and I'm a reference and instruction librarian at Mississippi College's Leland Speed Library. Today is Tuesday, January 31st, 2017, and I'm interviewing Dr. Jeffrey Carr of Point Loma. Okay. Hello, my name is Shane Hand, and I'm a reference and instruction librarian at Mississippi College's Leland Speed Library. Today is Tuesday, January 31st, 2017, and I'm interviewing Dr. Jeffrey Carr of Point Loma. Okay. Hello, my name is Shane Hand, and I'm a reference and instruction librarian at Mississippi College's Leland Speed Library. Today is Tuesday, January 31st, 2017, and I'm interviewing Dr. Jeffrey Carr of Point Loma. I'm interviewing Dr. Jeffrey Carr of Point Loma Nazarene University in San Francisco, California, for the Dr. Edward McMillan University Archives of Mississippi College. Dr. Carr, thank you for your time and willingness to participate in this oral history project. If you will, please state your full name.
Jeffrey Carr, Jeffrey Carr, and I am at Point Loma Nazarene University. However, it is in San Diego, California, and not San Francisco, California.
Thank you for that correction. And Dr. Carr, let's begin discussing your family and early education. When were you born?
I was born in the mid-50s, definitely. Definitely a baby boomer.
A baby boomer. And are you married?
Yes.
Okay. And what's your wife's name?
My wife's name is Lillian, L-I-L-L-I. My wife's name is Lillian, L-I-L-L-I-A-N.
Okay, Lillian Carr. And what does she do?
She is the creative director at a book publishing firm.
Okay. And do you have any children?
I have one son, Jeffrey Jr.
And how old is Jeffrey Jr.?
19.
19. And how old is your wife?
She's also a baby boomer.
Baby boomer.
Born in the 1950s.
Okay. Well, let's. I've seen from your website. I have a little bit of much, but let's start with your grandparents. I believe your grandfather was a sharecropper.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. And now, go ahead.
And my grandfather was a sharecropper. However, he was also a mixed-race person. He was his mother was black, his father is white. His mother was very dark-skinned, but my grandfather presented as white. He looked more white than he did black. He didn't look black at all.
Okay. Do you remember their names? Sorry.
Yeah, my grandfather's name is Rufus Harvey.
Okay.
There is Nancy Horn Harvey. My grandfather's mother was a former slave.
Okay.
He was born in the 1880s, and it was my grandfather who actually was he raised me in his mid-90s. So when I was born, he was already in his 70s, almost 80. But he was the person who actually spent most of my formative years with him. But he was a sharecropper until he turned about 70, and Clinton, and he moved us to Clinton in the 60s, and he was retired from that point on.
Okay. What do you remember of your grandfather as a person, as his personality, his values?
not just in our home and our family, but in each of the communities that he lived in. He was one of the most respected men in the community that because of his personality, where he presented himself, he was very well regarded and loved by everyone. Someone you could be a role model for anyone.
And you said he moved to Clinton in the 1960s. Where did he move from?
It was actually 1960 was the actual year.
Thank you.
He moved from Rankin actual year.
Thank you.
He moved from Rankin County, and he had spent most of his life in Rankin County, in the Brandon area, in the Morton area, in an area very rural areas around that way between Morton and Jackson, and most of his years were in the Brandon area there. And he and his second wife, his first wife died in the 1920s as part of the flu pandemic that killed over 20 million people in the world.
Wow.
His first wife died as part of that, and then he married my grandmother, who was much younger than his daughter. And from his first marriage, he had 3 children, and with his second marriage to my grandmother, he had 7 children with her.
Wow.
And my grandmother came from a very large family of about medium income in terms of the black culture at that time. They weren't rich, but they weren't poor, and so she did go to school, and she was a school teacher for over 46 years. He did go to school, and she was a school teacher for over 46 years in the Rankin County area until she retired in 1963. And my grandfather was only a laborer and a farmer during his entire life. Was a laborer and a farmer. But those are the 2 people who had the most impact and influence on me as a small child and growing up.
Okay. So, tell me about your parents.
Was the 4th child out of the 7 that my grandmother and grandfather had, and she was always considered to be the intelligent person, but not intelligent enough to become an unwed mother. So a son, and then she married the father of her son, and she had a daughter. My oldest sister that I told you about, her name was Ophelia, and then I was the 3rd child. Okay. My mother was an educator as well. She got her education, and she started working full-time as a teacher in 1963 after she had her last child. Okay. And so she worked for, I would say, close to 40 years as a classroom teacher in high school, and about 75% was in Clinton, Mississippi, in the Clinton public school system.
Okay. Where did she go to? Where did she get her training? Where did she go to school?
She went to initially to what was called Campbell College, which was a sort of a junior college or community college. It was a junior college, and it was sort of a teacher training college that was for black students back in the 1940s and 50s.
Okay.
She started at Campbell, black students back in the 1940s and 50s.
Okay.
She started at Campbell College, and then Campbell College was taken over by Jackson State College. And Jackson State College is where she received her degree from back in the early 60s.
Okay.
So Campbell got her degree from back in the early 60s.
Okay.
So Campbell College, then Jackson State College. And then she got a master's from Jackson State University in the 70s.
So you mentioned she began teaching in 63, and she began teaching in 63 in Clinton.
No, not in Clinton.
Not in Clinton.
Not in Clinton.
Okay.
Yeah. There weren't any positions. There were only a few black schools in the state, and you had to find a job wherever you could.
Right.
So her first job was in Columbus, Mississippi. So basically, she would leave the house every Sunday evening or early Monday morning, drive to Columbus, and then come back on Fridays.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's probably an hour and a half, 2 hour drive.
Yeah, it's a good
or
little
more.
drive.
I can't remember really. Yeah.
And your dad? Tell me about your dad.
My dad was not educated. He barely had a third grade education. I would say he was pretty illiterate, and he only worked at...
So, and you have 2 siblings, is that correct?
No, I have 5 siblings.
5 siblings.
2 brothers and 3 sisters.
And what do they do?
My oldest brother is retired. He went to school at Hines. He went to school at Hines Junior College, and while he was in his freshman year, he was offered a job, a blue-collar job, working with AT&T. And he started when he was 18 years old working for AT&T. And he retired from when he was 18 years old working for AT&T. And he retired from AT&T when he was about 60 years old. So he worked for AT&T. He eventually was trained and cross-trained, so he's had many positions up to and including management and mostly technical. Sometime he actually retired because, computers were not part of the landscape back in the late 60s and early 70s. But eventually it had to become that. So, and my oldest sister, Ophia was, again, Mississippi College. Ophia is a retired psychologist. She had a master's in psychology from Jackson State University.
Okay. And
for over 25 years, she was with the Jackson Mental Health Clinic. And the last 5 to 10 years, she was either the assistant director or director of the Jackson Mental Health Clinic.
Okay. So let's talk about your education. So let's talk about your education, not the higher education, but elementary and high school. Where did you go? Where did you begin school?
I started, back in those years, we didn't have kindergarten in the state of Mississippi.
Okay.
So the first kindergarten in the state of Mississippi.
Okay.
So the first time that you were able to go to school was in the first grade. The first grade, I was enrolled at Sumner Hill High School. At that time, that was the only black school in the western part of Hinds County.
Okay.
And Sumner Hill High School, first graders went to school with 12th graders. We all rode on the same school buses, walked down the same halls, did the same things.
Okay.
And from the first through the third grade, we were in that setting. Mm-hmm. But in 1963, in the middle of my third grade, they finished building school. And so the first through the sixth grade were transferred from Sumner Hill to go to Lovett, which was about a mile down the street from Sumner Hill High School. Mm-hmm. So first through the third grade was at Sumner Hill High School. Then third through the sixth grade finished at Lovett Elementary. Pseudo graduated from Lovett. That was the first year that the federal government enforced and required the public schools to integrate which is
Right.
a lot of people don't understand that integration did not happen in 1954. It essentially didn't happen until really the 1970s, almost 20 years later.
Right.
But the first stab at it in Mississippi was this sort of artificial freedom of choice, where they allowed every person in every community to choose which school they would attend. And you could choose to, if you were brave enough or stupid enough, to attend a predominantly white school if you were stupid enough, to attend a predominantly white school if you were black, and absolutely no white would ever choose to go to a black school for fear of being ostracized from their community. And so that's what happened. When I graduated from elementary school, I was one of those people that was stupid. And when I graduated from elementary school, I was one of those people that was stupid and dumb enough. My family chose to integrate. So my family there were two families in Clinton that chose to go to the predominantly white school, and that was the family of the Hewitts.
Okay.
And that was the family of the Hewitts.
Okay.
Deborah Hewitt and Michael Hewitt. Deborah was in the ninth grade, and Michael was in the sixth grade, the same grade as I am.
Okay.
And then in my family, my brother was in the 10th grade, and he transferred to Clinton High School. My sister Ophia was in the 9th grade, and I was in the 7th grade. My next sister Lois was going into the 5th grade, and then my youngest sister Sordia, brother Rufus, was not of school age. But the five of us, and plus the two in the Hewlett family, were the first two to move over to the predominantly white schools, and were the only blacks in the entire school district in Hawaii. As a result of that, we were ostracized by our community, and at the same time made to feel as if we were heroes by others who were in favor of integration and civil rights. What you don't know at this time is that most people in Mississippi, even in black people in Mississippi, even in black communities,
right,
were not in favor of integration.
Okay.
They were very fearful, and regardless of the fact that it was not a good educational system, good resources, good materials, good educational system, good resources, good materials, they were willing to not. They didn't want to stir the water. They didn't want to buck the system, and so they felt like it would be stayed where we are. Unfortunately, my family believed in education first, and they felt that if you wanted to be the best person you could be, you need to get the best education you can get. So we chose to go to predominantly white school, which was far better than the black high school. I went to school across the street from Mississippi College, and at that time was Clinton Elementary Junior High School. So they had the first through the 8th grade was at the school. I think they actually tore it down. I don't think it's there anymore. Right down the street from Lapis Motors, which you probably don't know what that is either. Clinton Junior High, and then 9th grade I went over to the high school. In the 9th grade, the federal government told Mississippi that what they were doing was in effect skirting the integrate because they were not achieving integration. So in my 9th grade is when Mississippi was forced to actually integrate schools, where they drew boundary lines and required people to only go to schools within certain boundary lines. I was able to stay at Clinton High School. Were forced to come to the high school with us because it was in that particular district, and so we went from having 4 or 5 blacks in a school of whites to really about 200 or 300 blacks in a school of whites.
Wow.
Conversely, I would tell you, School of Whites.
Wow.
Conversely, I would tell you that the whites who were within the boundaries to go to the black schools did not go to the black schools.
Okay.
At that time, they set up what were called the council schools, and they were supported by the council schools, and they were supported by, church fundraisers or people paying their money. But any whites who were forced to attend black schools began going to these private schools called council schools. And these private schools actually persist to this day. Schools now, but it used to be called Council School Number this, or Council School of Madison, or Council School of Jackson. Matter of fact, the Jackson Academy, which is a private school, was first the Council School of Jackson.
Okay.
It was founded as a way to not integrate and you need.
No, this is great information. Thank you.
But that's my early education.
Yes, sir. Was this a hard decision for your parents?
It was a very hard decision because we opened ourselves up to some dangerous situations, where we were constantly accosted by our neighbors, by folks at the school. No one believed it was going to happen there, because until we showed up, they didn't think we were going to actually show up.
Oh.
And so over the period of time, we were spit on, we were egged. And so over the period of time, we were spit on, we were egged. Of course, we were called all kinds of racial epithets. And in many, many ways, while we were getting a better education, we were also being discriminated in ways that would prevent us from getting the whole benefit of being in those schools. But we were able to, to survive it until they came up with the forced integration.
Right.
But I did excel academically. But they have what is called a beta society, and only Dean's List people could be admitted or invited to join it. And I was the first black in Clinton Public Schools to receive that honor to become a member of the.
Okay.
Yeah. If I put out some old yearbooks, it would have pictures of me, the only black face on a sea of whites in the National Beta Club. That was the academic honor society or honor organization at that time.
Okay. Yeah, that's how.
At that time.
Okay. Yeah, that's how I found you. Yearbooks. So.
Was it the Mississippi College yearbook?
The Mississippi College yearbook. That's correct.
Yeah. I was speaking about the high school, the junior high and high school yearbooks.
Right.
Yeah. Because I don't think the National Beta Society and high school yearbooks.
Right.
Yeah. Because I don't think the National Beta Society even exists anymore. I think it's changed to some other type of maybe Greek letter honor society. I don't know what it's called.
Okay.
But, yeah.
So the resistance that you faced, that happened at school?
It happened at school. It happened at home. In the middle of the night, and
Wow.
a lot of prank phone calls. It was just general harassment that you should never have to, endure. But we did.
Exactly. Yeah. What was life growing up like in Clinton, which you've really discussed here with your?
No, that's only part of it.
Okay.
Sorry to overtalk you.
No.
But that was just a part of the school. It was a very strict Southern living. Clinton was no different than the rest of the state. It may have been just a little bit more liberal because of its proximity to the state capital.
Okay.
At the same time, in cities such as Noxapater and Carthage and Philadelphia, they actually had places on sidewalks that blacks couldn't walk on. Clinton did not have that type of really distinct discrimination, but all the water fountains were white and colored. All the bathrooms were white and colored.
Right.
The sense of place in terms of being oppressed, you knew what your place was, and you knew how you were to behave in terms of how you spoke to people. A black man would never look a white man in the eye. A black man would never even look towards a white woman. A black man would never even look towards a white woman, because that would be instant death. We talk about microaggressions today as being, a real critical part of something we need to address and correct. Well, we didn't have microaggressions addressed and correct. Well, we didn't have microaggressions back then. It was just aggression.
Okay.
I remember going to on more than one occasion, going to a gas station right there adjacent to Mississippi College. A gas station right there adjacent to Mississippi College to get a flat fixed on a tire on a Saturday morning, and seeing two white men sitting in a chair out in front of the gas station while we were standing there getting the gas. I mean, literally 3 or 4 feet from them in the gas. I mean, literally 3 or 4 feet from them, and them having a conversation about what happened last night. And I said, old Charlie got killed last night. And they said, yeah, who killed him? One of them other coons? Yeah, he got in a big fight. They got, and the other person said, that's all right, because the only good nigga is a dead nigga.
Wow.
And having to hear that, I remember just as plainly as it happened yesterday. That man said the only good nigga is a dead nigga, and I'm standing right there. And my grandfather was no microaggression. It was the way that the world was.
It was aggression.
And so that is what you experienced on a daily basis. It wasn't an exception. That is what life was. And there was a healthy amount of racism that was just part of strata. And as things began to progress in terms of economics, when we were creating a little bit more of a middle class, things started to ease a little bit. But as long as we were a labor and an agrarian, really the early 1970s, that is the mindset that you lived with.
So, did you have... I'm curious about library access at the time. Did you have access to a public library?
They're attached to the City Hall.
Okay.
And I don't know if we were allowed to go there or not. We just never did.
Okay.
So I don't know if it was something that we could have taken advantage of, but there was several things that was just unspoken that you just didn't even ask about. At some point in the 70s, they built a separate building that was the Clinton Public Library, but I think when I was growing up, there wasn't one, or if they did, it was just one room, and it was not anything that we partook of.
Okay.
You may have different history than that. I don't know. The Mississippi College Library, of course, was 100% off.
Beginning in when you were in school there, or before?
Before.
Before, right.
Not while a student. Of course, as a student, you had access.
Right.
But as a black person in the community, you would not even try to participate in any resources on the campus.
Okay. So I believe that I read in the 1960s you were involved with a voter registration campaign with Julian Bonds and John Lewis.
Absolutely, I was. Another high moment. And I will tell you exactly how that happened. In Clinton, there was several families who were really on the vanguard of leadership for civil rights. Okay. One of those was a family headed by a single mother. Her name was Thomasine Gray. Mm-hmm. Thomasine Gray was the secretary of one of the local NAACP chapters. I don't know which one it was. Of one of the local NAACP chapters. I don't know which one it was. I think maybe it was the Jackson or the county NAACP. I don't remember what it was. But Thomasine Gray, and I'm going to give you a little side note on this. Thomasine Gray was a leader in the community. There were very few blacks, even black pastors, who were leaders, and she was very outspoken. Now, Thomasine Gray had a daughter whose name was Meta Z. Gray. Meta Z. Gray and my sister Ophelia Carr were the first two blacks ever admitted to Mississippi College. So those were the first two. So Thomasine Gray, mobilizing people to be a part of the voter registration when the Voter Registration Act was passed in 1965. Mm-hmm. So in the summer of 65, summer of 66, one of the things that the movement did was utilize a lot of young kids to do the age 10 to actually only up to about 12 or 13. Because when you were 13 or 14, you didn't have time to be out in the streets knocking on doors. You had to have a job.
Right.
And that's why mostly children were part of that voter registration, because poor black people couldn't take off work to go get people to sign up. Because poor black people couldn't take off work to go get people to sign up. You had to go to your jobs. And quite honestly, the white bosses would not let you offer your job.
Right.
If you ever seen the movie Help, that helps you understand.
Yes.
It's like they had their thumb on us. You weren't going to do anything, and you certainly weren't going to do anything to jeopardize. Thumb on us. You weren't going to do anything, and you certainly weren't going to do anything to jeopardize your job, because there were so few and far between. So Thomasine Gray loaded me and a couple of other people into her car, and we drove to Jackson and had a big rally. And there was Julian Bond and John Lewis, who were loud and told us how to do it. And a couple of songs were sung, and doing what you do and those kinds of things. And in the hot summer sun, we walked from door to door, and got people to sign up to vote. And it was hard, because a lot of black people did not want to vote because they're white, not to register to vote. So, yes, that was my experience with them. I didn't really know who John Lewis was at the time, in terms of his stature, because he was only like 21, 22 years old.
Right.
Julian Bum was a national figure at that time, and continued to. It was exciting to be in the same sphere as those folks doing that kind of work.
Yeah, I imagine so. So you mentioned the trouble with the jobs. Was there any concern with your parents with while you were doing your parent, like an employer might find out that your mom's son, you were out, doing this? Would that threaten their jobs? Were they worried about that?
No. First of all, my father was only occasionally employed. He was unemployed a lot of his life. Okay. My mother was a teacher, and she taught in public schools. So, no. So no concern. And she taught it. They were all black schools too. So it was like, hey, we care. So.
Did you happen to participate in Freedom Summer of '64?
Nope.
No.
Too young.
Too young. Freedom Summer of '64?
Nope.
No.
Too young.
Too young. Okay. Okay. Well, you got plenty in, so 1 year. So let's see. Then
that was really dangerous too. So I want you to.
Oh, Freedom Summer.
Oh, dangerous too. So I want you to.
Oh, Freedom Summer.
Oh goodness, yes. Everything from Freedom Summer having to do with the bus, all of that.
The Freedom Riders.
The Freedom Riders. That was all. It was scary. Jackson, Mississippi was the major places held. You can do the history on it, but Jackson was a hot,
right?
It was a hotbed of stuff going on, and we were right there in the rural part of Clinton, but we had to all watch our step because we didn't want to be the next people hung up or found into. So anyway. Yeah. So you began school at MC, Mississippi College, in 1972. Correct.
Now, your sister, Ophelia Carr, and Metazee Gray. They began in 1971.
No,
No.
actually it was 1970.
1970. Okay.
Yes.
And go ahead.
Yeah, they started in 1970 as the only two blacks. And then neither one of them persisted past their freshman year because of the discrimination, the bias. It was just too much, so they both left.
Okay.
The next year, in 1971, I'm going to throw some new stuff at you that I've given you before.
Okay.
In 1971, there were about 5 blacks who came in 1971.
Mm.
And I can tell you 3 of the names of those people. The other 2, I can't call their names right now.
Okay.
One of them is very easy to call because it was a female, and she was my first cousin. And she went in 71. She graduated from high school in May of 71.
Mm-hmm.
And she decided to go to Mississippi College because she thought my sister was going to be there. But my sister wasn't. She decided she was going to leave.
Right.
So Jennifer Gale came in also Willie Price
Okay.
and Calvin Holmes.
Okay.
The other 2, I can't remember their names for some reason. I'm drawing a blank.
Mary Watson?
That's it. Mary Watson was one.
Okay.
And there was one other person whose name I can't call. It have been only 4 people.
Okay.
It may not have been 5. But yes, Mary Watson, that I remember her so well. Yeah, I can see her now. Interesting. I was not close with Mary Watson, and she didn't persist either.
Oh.
She didn't graduate from Mississippi College. But I know they did persist, and they were in the first graduating class that had blacks to graduate, which was the year before I graduated.
Okay.
And I started in June of 1972.
June of 1972.
Yeah, I finished.
June of 1972.
Yeah, I finished high school when I was 16 years old.
Wow.
I finished high school in May and went directly into college in June.
Okay.
And of course, Willie and Calvin were entered into their sophomore year. Of course, Willie and Calvin were entered into their sophomore years.
Mm-hmm.
And Mary was still there, but my cousin Jennifer chose not to return.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, so you moved quickly. I think I have a yearbook 1973, and it has you listed as a junior.
That was because I was taking a bunch of classes, but I actually stayed there the full 4 years.
Right, okay.
Yeah, I had junior status, but I was basically still a sophomore.
Okay. So Willie Price and Calvin Holmes both graduated. Do you happen to know what ended up with them at all?
Well, I have not remained in contact with them at all.
Okay.
But I can tell you a little bit more background about them.
Okay.
So during the early 70s, all of sports was being integrated at that time. And it was in order to stay competitive, because for whatever reason the black athletes seemed to show a lot more athletic prowess than the white counterparts. And so there was a big rush all over the nation to recruit black athletes in predominantly white schools. And that was how Willie Price and Calvin Holmes ended up there. They were both stellar star athletes in the state of Mississippi. They were offered full scholarships, and they chose to go.
Oh wow!
To Mississippi College, and they remained star athletes all 4 years. Calvin Holmes may still hold some records in terms of the. At the time, it wasn't 100 meter; it was a 100-yard dash.
Okay.
And a 200-yard dash, and Willie was what's the person who jumps over that beam?
The hurdles? No.
Yeah, not the hurdles. That's the actual race, but it's another. Oh, it was called the high jump.
The high jump.
He did the high jump.
Yeah.
Because there's the high jump, the long jump. So the long jump is when you just the thing, and then the pole vault is when you jump over the beam using the pole vault itself. So yeah, that's what they brought in. And then the following year in '72, when I came in, is when they started bringing in black basketball players and black football players. Now the thing that was really black male on campus that was not on a athletic scholarship.
Okay. Were you on a scholarship at all?
Yeah, not really.
Okay.
It was, but it was not really a scholarship. I had a backstory on that as well, but I want to give you another backstory. When I was in high school, I was very much passionate in love with music, and I was a member of the elite boys quartet. I was the only black of the elite boys quartet. I was the only black in the concert choir.
Okay.
I was the only black in the first black in the elite boys quartet. And then I was the first black who, and it's easy to be first black because there are no other blacks there, okay? I was the first black who was a student conductor of the concert choir, which is the highest honor you can get. Conductor of the concert choir, which is the highest honor you can get in music, in choral music, is to be appointed the student conductor.
Oh.
I had a great relationship with my music teacher. Her name was Mrs. Shaw. Her husband, Dr. Shaw, was a professor at Mississippi College. Mrs. Shaw, her husband, Dr. Shaw, was a professor at Mississippi College. But they both got their degrees from the University of Southern Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
They convinced me to actually audition for a scholarship at the University of Southern Mississippi. So one day in my senior year, they came up to Mississippi. So one day in my senior year, they came by my house and picked me up at 7 o'clock in the morning, and they drove me to Hattiesburg and spent the day with me as I was being auditioned and tested. And as a result of that, I got a full scholarship in music to University of Southern Mississippi, USM, including room and board and tuition to USM.
Wow. But you chose not to go.
Chose not to go. I was stupid, okay? I was young and dumb.
Okay.
I thought I was in love. Don't leave me. And so I turned down the scholarship and decided to stay local. And as you can imagine, we were broke up before the first semester was over.
Oh.
It was history. But I did audition for a music scholarship at Mississippi College, and they said, well, we don't have any full scholarship, but we'll give you a partial scholarship. So to answer your question, it required me to be in one of the performing musical groups, and I chose to be in the cantata choir because it had less responsibilities than being one of the other groups.
Okay.
So, yeah. Now, I hope that answers your question, far and above what you ever thought was going to come. But yeah.
No, it's a great detailed answer.
No,
it's a great detailed answer. And I've seen the picture. I've seen the cantata choir picture. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
So, let's see. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I want to give you another quick backstory because you may not have the context of a lot of these things.
I don't.
Quick backstory because you may not have the context of a lot of these things.
I don't.
I'm sure you're familiar with the Higher Education Act, and I'm sure you're familiar with Title I, 2, 3, 4, 5, and all these kinds of things.
Yes.
One of the titles, I believe, was Title IV, created the Pell Grant. Well, the Pell Grant was in 1971, but it got approved in 72 for all entering freshmen in the coming in 73. And you could not be grandfathered in. So when I started college, although I was dirt poor black guy from Mississippi, I used whatever savings, and basically the savings I used was my grandmother and grandfather were willing to spot me for college because they had a lot of belief in me. So my first year in college, you had to just pay cash over the barrel, all you had to do. The second year, I said, they got these Pell Grants. So I went to the financial aid office and said, I know I'm for no one to school one. You missed it by a year. I said, well, I'm here now. And they said, no, we're not allowed to give it to any continuing student. You have to be an incoming student. So only freshmen could get it. Then the next year, you could get it as a sophomore because you came in as a freshman. So I was not able to take advantage of any kind of opportunity grant that was available for me while I was in college at Mississippi College, which is a whole nother backstory in terms of what my life was like on the campus.
Mm-hmm.
But we can get into that later.
Okay. So, let's see. I'm curious. Ophelia Carr, Medici, Mary Watson, they didn't finish at MC, correct?
Yeah, Mary Watson started in 71.
Right.
I don't believe she did, because she kind of dropped out of sight after my second year there, and I would have been in school with her for 3 years, and I just don't remember whatever happened to her.
Okay.
For 3 years, and I just don't remember whatever happened to her.
Okay. I was just wondering if there might be a gender aspect with Ophelia, Medici not finishing, and Willie and Calvin possibly finishing, and then with the
and
scholarship.
don't forget my cousin Jennifer.
Yes,
as well.
yes. Yeah, and then with the
and don't forget
scholarship.
my cousin Jennifer.
Yes,
as well.
yes. Yeah.
It's hard to tell if it's going to be a mixture of two.
Mm-hmm.
The low expectation of female students. None of them made good grades at Mississippi College.
Okay.
Of the females that I know, I think Mary may have done better, but my sister, who is really the smartest person, she didn't do well academically. Medici was reasonably intelligent. She didn't do well. And Jennifer didn't do well. I don't really know about Mary. She did persist for at least a couple of years that I know of. But quite honestly, none academically at Mississippi College. And there's a reason for that.
Okay.
There was a great deal of discrimination. And where it could be subjective, professors took subjective license and graded us probably 2 letter grades lower than any other person in a class.
Wow.
Now,
Wow.
It's not just conjecture. These are some of the parts of that life that people don't really think about, what people had to go through during those periods, especially if you have the whole faculty who is in line with, this is what we want to do. We don't want any black people to be smarter than the white people. They did that. My sister left to be smarter than the white people. They did that. My sister left there, went to a college in Michigan, and then eventually transferred back to Jackson State University, and she graduated magna cum laude and continued to be the most intelligent person you would ever want to meet. And not only that, she's had 4 kids, and all 4 person you would ever want to meet. And not only that, she's had 4 kids, and all 4 of her kids are highly intelligent.
Right.
All have, advanced degrees. Matter of fact, one of her children is at Mississippi College right now, and she hopefully will defend her dissertation this May at MC. Her dissertation this May at MC.
Okay. So she should complete it in May. Wow.
Yeah, she was able to defend her proposal last summer.
Okay.
And so she should be finished. She's working full time. She's an assistant principal at a major high school. She's an assistant principal at a major high school in Jackson. So and she's got 2 kids and yada yada yada. Mm-hmm. It's a miracle she's able to do what she can do. But that's the kind of thing that happened. And I'll give you this one example. This happened in my senior year in college. I went through this for 3 years, lackluster grades. I said, why am I getting these bad grades, And so in my senior year, I actually chose topics. I was a history poli-sci major.
Okay. I
actually chose topics that were could be considered sensitive, if not controversial, especially in a society that we lived in back in the 70s. But I had a couple of people who were willing to come alongside for their own reason, and one was a white gentleman who was an adjunct faculty at, he maybe was an instructor or something at Mississippi College in his name, but
that's okay.
He taught in the field of Southern history, and in one of my classes, I took Dr. Howard. So Dr. Howard, Dr. McMillan was a upstanding person.
Okay.
Thought he did a great job of not discrimination, being sensitive. Dr. Howard just blatantly racist. So
Dr. Ron Howard?
Howard, Howard.
Yes.
How do I remember this stuff 41 years later? Who knows? It's because it's deeply embedded in my DNA at this point.
Was that Dr. Ron Howard?
Okay. So it will be in the history department. I took a Southern history class from him. And, the other professor, he didn't teach at Mississippi College. He taught at Jackson State University, but he was white.
Mm-hmm.
And I met him because he bought a house on there in front of the college that Mississippi College and First Baptist Church is on.
Highway 80?
What's that street called? No, not Highway 80. The main drag that, I think it's just called Clinton Boulevard.
Okay.
He bought a house there that was actually a house registered with the Mississippi Historical. It was a white wood frame house. And when he bought it and moved in, he was not able to do anything to the house because it was a historical landmark. And through some reason, I ended up meeting him and found out he was a history professor at Jackson State. And so we became good friends. He was a history professor at Jackson State. And so we became good friends, and I told him I was at Mississippi College. And for one particular paper that I wrote a paper. It was like a capstone paper for my history major, and Dr. Howard was the person who was teaching the class. And I chose a subject that, number one, he didn't like, but number two, it had to do with racial relationship. The subject of the paper was the strange relationship between the master and the slave, because it was a very strange one, with all the, because it was a very strange one, with all the, societal structural changes, the intimacy, because my grandfather was half white.
Right.
All those things are going on. It's like, how can you subjugate people that you have sexual relations with? It's like, how can you subjugate people that you have sexual relations with? It doesn't make sense. So anyway, I wrote a paper on it, and the professor who was at Jackson State was one of my proofreaders, and I had him to read it, and he helped guide me through it, and so it was really doctoral level work.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned it in, and I got a C- on the paper. I went, what the heck? And so after I got a C-, I took the same paper, and I gave it to 3 different professors to proofread it, to give me feedback, and to grade it as if they were plus for the same paper.
Wow. Okay.
So take that instance and multiply it times 100 over 4 years. That's what you had to deal with.
Yeah, that's tough, to say the least.
This kind of stuff you can't make up.
Right.
You have to be there in the moment to kind of understand and that kind of thing can form you in ways that no matter how much we advance as a society, those scars are still there. The wounds we advance as a society, those scars are still there. The wounds may have healed, but a wound leaves a scar. And you have to live with that every single day. How much, what could have been with the right type of motivation, support, people believing in you, what could have been. So, in any case.
Okay. And forgive me for asking again, but was that Howell with an L or Howard?
No, you're right. It was Howell. Howell. That's it.
Okay.
Howell.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
He's long dead and gone too, so I don't care. I did complain about the grade to Dr. McMillan.
Okay.
And I'm a university professor too. It doesn't do any good if you complain, because that's his domain. Howell's only comment on the paper was that. So basically, was saying, I don't want to hear about this.
Wow.
It doesn't serve me and my purposes. So you should have wrote a paper on anything like Sherman's March to the Sea or something. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But
okay.
That's not what I...
Howell, yes. Walter Howell.
Oh. That's the guy. Oh, my God, I just had a nightmare.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That was a trigger word, Walter Howard.
Oh, okay.
I didn't remember his first name, but that is who it was. He gave me hell for 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
I should say, I mean, statement to your perseverance and your intellect and your family's training, right? I mean, you go on to earn your master's and then your PhD, and today you're a professor and a director at a university. It's a lot for MC to be proud of, I believe. Speaking of, if I can go on a slight tangent, not much. The yearbook picture. I noticed your first picture in the yearbook is in 1970. Not your first picture, but your first picture with the class. Did you just opt to not have your picture taken, or?
I don't remember. Probably did.
Okay.
It just didn't go or do something.
Okay.
So I should be in all 4 of them, though.
You're in them, but I think it's 73 as opposed to being with the cantata.
What was before? Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I really don't know.
Okay.
I can't remember that, but I will tell you that in your looking at the pictures, did you see the picture of me with the?
I'm not sure. Is that what you had on? That might have been in the 73 picture.
I don't know. There was a picture that was really popular on campus because you know how folks have their hair braided up into
Right.
cornrows. Their hair braided up into
Right.
cornrows. I was the first one in the area to do that.
Oh, wow.
And they actually came over to my dorm room, took a picture of me in the dorm, and had an article in the school newspaper about this guy and his new hairstyle he has.
Really?
It was funny. It was new hairstyle he has.
Really?
It was funny. It was absolutely hilarious, and that picture got a lot of use of me sitting at a table playing cards and my hair in cornrows.
Huh.
Anyway,
I will look for it. I will look for that one.
It's actually visited the campus probably about 10 years ago with my young son, and we went into the library, and I put it up on the microfiche and showed him the picture of me with the cornrows. And actually, I took a photo of that particular picture in the school newspaper. And
do you remember what year that was?
It was 73.
73. Yeah.
Yeah, it was probably in the months between October and February.
Okay.
That I had the cornrows. Well, anyway.
So you mentioned, since you mentioned the school paper, this is one of the questions I'm curious about regarding the integration of MC. Was there any coverage of MC's integration in the Clinton paper or the student paper, the Clarion Ledger, or the Jackson Advocate?
You know, it was low level, and I think it was nuanced into the greater milieu of what was going on in integration at that time. People were, we had gotten past some of the higher education integration big questions in the mid to late 60s with what had happened up at Ole Miss and some other places. The private colleges, Millsaps, Mississippi College, those were kind of low level, and things just kind of went on under the radar. So it wasn't like this big, it was kind of like old news at that point.
Okay.
And it was only like a few old news at that point.
Okay.
And it was only like a few people, and quite honestly, a whole lot of white people couldn't go to Mississippi College, so they were that interested in what was going on there. It's only the elite folks went to Mississippi College. Folks went to Mississippi College and Millsaps and those kinds of places. So.
Okay. So one of our history professors currently here at MC, Dr. Otis Pickett, I spoke with him about the interview that we're doing. He was interested in, and one of these is, what did or did not the administration do to make you feel comfortable or welcome?
The administration did absolutely nothing to make you feel comfortable or welcome, nor you.
Okay.
And if you ever brought anything up, there was like, well, you shouldn't have come here to begin with. So we learned what the boundaries were, and rather than make things worse than they were, we said, okay, that's the way it's going to be, so let me not, make things worse. So, yeah, administration from the president on down, the president ended up going to jail anyway. You know who that was, right?
The president.
You know who that was, right?
The president of MC, I do not. What's his name?
Louis Nobles.
Okay. I remember seeing him, the name, and the picture in the yearbooks, but I didn't know he went.
That's a big name. No, he was part of a national.
I didn't know he went.
That's a big name. No, he was part of a national manhunt to find him because of he had stolen literally millions of dollars from Mississippi College. Oh, they probably swept all this under the carpet, under the rug, because it really made MC look bad.
Yeah.
Because of the loss of money from donations, from tuitions, operating costs, from the theft that he was involved in over years. And when they finally did investigations and tried to find him, he fled the state, and they had a national man. He was on the national news. The reason being that Louis Nobles was one of the chemists, inventors of but he supposedly had money, but he was living above his means.
Okay.
And he ended up doing that. He's the person whose name is on my my diploma.
Huh.
The grand larcenist. So anyway, the department was really, they showed no sympathy, they showed no caring, no concern whatsoever. When it was time for bills to be paid, I was always on the edge of being kicked out of school because they offered no mercy at all, and they treated me so harshly at all, and they treated me so harshly. Every time I walk in, it was like, what do you want? It was pretty bad. So no support from administration, no caring. What low-level support I got was from just a handful of faculty who were kind of liberal, forward leading. Are you familiar with a radio station called WHJT?
I am not. What was that again?
JT.
I am not.
No. It's actually the Mississippi College's own radio station.
Okay.
It's there, right there on campus. As a matter of fact, it's next door to you in the basement of the speech of the arts building.
Okay.
And WHJT, Hollis and Julia Todd, hence the H, J, and T. And they were speech professors at Mississippi College. And when they opened up this radio station, I was actually a disc jockey on Mississippi College's radio station. And this Lily White at Mississippi College had a black person who was represented on the radio.
Yeah.
And so it was through the kind of nurturing that people like that gave that made it palatable that you want to stay and hang in there. I don't know whatever happened to them.
Okay.
But during the time that they treated me with respect and be a part of the campus. So, yeah.
Okay, and you also mentioned before we started the interview, when we were speaking, Dr. Ed McMillan?
Yes. Mm-hmm. He was the chair of the history department when I graduated. He was not the chair when I started. And I didn't really deal with him to my sophomore or junior year because when I originally admitted, I was actually the major in political science. And then I decided to change from a major in political science to a minor and then majored in history. And that's when my interactions became minor and then majored in history. And that's when my interactions began with Dr. McMillan.
Okay. And he was your advisor? You said he was another...
He was my advisor my last 2 years.
Okay. And a positive influence here? One of the influence here? One of the... You said?
Yes, he was.
Okay.
In a very casual, non-committal way, but at least he wasn't working to undermine me.
Right. Let's see. So we're this sort of wrapping up here. We've been going over an hour, and I don't want to try your patience. So after graduating college as a history teacher?
Yep.
Where was this?
In Clinton.
In Clinton. Oh, wow.
Yep.
So were you all...
Actually,
go ahead.
Clinton and Jackson.
Clinton and Jackson.
So in Clinton, at Clinton High School, I went right back. I had just graduated high school 4 years before. And there was a history teacher. There was Ada Horton, who got deathly ill. So I finished out the school year for her.
Okay.
And then the next year, I did some work with the Jackson school system. Before I did some work with the Jackson school system. Before I took a job working for the Department of Public Welfare.
Okay. And were you the first African American instructor or teacher in Clinton?
Oh goodness, no.
No. Okay. Okay.
No. Because when they did the integration back in No.
Okay. Okay.
No. Because when they did the integration back in 1971,
right,
it brought in all the black teachers too.
Okay.
So,
okay.
And my mother was one of those, by the way.
That's right. That's you said.
By
that.
this time, she had finally landed a job at Sumner Hill High School, and she had finally landed a job at Sumner Hill High School, and she was at Sumner Hill High School, and then when they traded over, then she came to Clinton High School, and we were right there in the same building for the next 2 or 3 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you also worked for the governor's staff. For a time, right?
Yes. When I was at the Department of Public Welfare, I was actually living in an apartment that was owned by the Hinds County tax collector, whose name I can't recall. But I want to just tell you exactly what it is.
Okay.
He and I got to be good friends, so much so that he actually asked me to be the resident manager of his apartment complex, which I was grateful to take on because it cut my rent in half. He wanted to show the governor that he knew black people, courthouse, and he invited me to come to the county courthouse for the reception for Governor Cliff Finch. And I went to the courthouse, and I was basically the only black person there. And so the tax collector said, "I want you to be a friend of mine. I got a black friend." I said, "Oh, nice to meet you." And so where'd you go? So I said, "I went to Mississippi College." Cliff Finch's eyes got big as a saucer.
Okay.
"You went to Mississippi College?" I said, "Yes, sir. I graduated in 1976. He said, "My daughters went to Mississippi College." I said, "I know. I was there with them." He said, "Well, tell me a bit about yourself." I told him, "So." He said, "You're the kind of person that I want to have on my staff. So come see this person on this date."
Right.
So that was like on a Wednesday, and he asked me to go see some person next Thursday, and so I just took off from work, went down to the governor's office, and saw his chief of staff or whoever it was, and I didn't know what was going on. I walked in and he said, well, looks like Governor Fitz really likes you, huh? I said, well, I was pleasure to meet him too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I was pleasure to meet him too.
Yeah.
Okay, well, what day you want to start? And I said, hey, excuse me? He wants you to work on his staff, so what day you going to start? I didn't know that's what he meant, that he was offering me a job. He just said, you're the kind of person I like to have. And he told me to come down. I thought I was going to apply, and I never applied. I just walked in, and they gave me a job.
Wow.
So in one of the governor's offices. So that was that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Carr, let's see. So, we've come a long way, if you will, in the past half of a century regarding race relations. And it's probably a bit of an understatement for me to say that we still have a long way to go. However, as a child, as a civil rights veteran who served on the front lines in the 60s in Mississippi, and as an accomplished educator and advocate for the underrepresented, what was it like for you to see the first African American elected president of the United States? African American elected president of the United States.
Well, first of all, the way that you just detailed out it seems like a lot more grander than there is. But thank you for saying what you did say.
Okay.
Wow, I was like, who is this person you're talking about? Honestly, who's this person you're talking about? Honestly, it was unbelievable that it would happen, and when it did happen, I was really ecstatic. I lived for 8 years in kind of a, and I think it helps anyone to appreciate the work that's gone on before, that people like him would have the confidence to want to pursue that high office. But it did not come without a cost, and it came with a cost, and it's going to come at a cost now for the future because, Sean, you're white, so I'm going to be straight out.
Okay.
When he got elected president, there was literally millions of white men saying, how in the hell did we get a black president before I became president? And that's why we're stuck with Donald Trump today.
Right.
Because they feel like if he could be president, anybody can be president. And so basically what the country did was elect anybody to be president. So we're going to pay the cost of that. But to answer your question, I think that it was a phenomenal event. We would really never know the long-term benefits of having that particular glass ceiling shattered, but it is something that helps validate that there is hope for us all. But there's always this pendulum that goes from one side to the other, and it's come back in the other direction with a fierce momentum. And even today, I'm supposed to be in the meeting right now. No, this 90-day thing. This is just I was here working last night though, 7 o'clock last night, trying to polarize groups, pull people together, come on to an adequate respect. We got events on campus. We got all kinds of things dealing with this insanity. And there's, the immigration policy and things he's doing with Planned Parenthood and things he's doing with selection of people like this Becky woman for Department of Education, and the crackpot doctor from Johns Hopkins who happens to be black for HUD, and we talk about that because of those issues. So we took probably 2 or 3 steps forward, but at the same time we put when Obama was elected. But at the same time, we put a big bullseye on our backs. Right. And that's what's happening right now. So anyway, emotional response.
Hey, well, I would say informed. So, for what my 2 cents are worth. Dr. Carr, I'm entirely grateful for your time today. Is before we stop the tape, I just want to before we stop the tape, I just want to give you a moment, and if there's anything else you would like to add that I might not have asked you, or anything that could have come to mind over the past hour that you would like to share.
Well, there are a lot of things, and
Or that you would like to share.
well, there are a lot of things, and I would just say that you